DXpeditions to 3B8 by Olof Lundberg, G0CKV. Olof will discuss the DXpeditioning, in particular contest DXpeditions, what is involved, where to go, getting there, finding a great location, propagation, building a team, antennas and rig. The main objective is having a good time and fun with the radio. A secondary objective is how to beat the likes of K3LR and M6T competitive holidaying. Olof Lundberg, CKV, was licensed in 1960 as Sierra Mike 6, Charlie Kilo Victor. As an SWL, he followed emergency traffic on 2182 as a local fishing boat was lost in the North Sea storm in November 1954, an experience that defined his future professional path. In 1957, he listened to the bleeps from the first Sputnik, and in 1958, Sunspot Maximum got him hooked on HF DXing contest. Building pretty good radios at work and growing a family left little time for radio as a hobby for many years, and since retiring for the third time some 20 years ago, he's returned to his roots with HF radio and the ever-developing new technologies. CW contesting remains top and keeps his mind young. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are tired of trying to operate in a contest from a suburban London garden, and we want to go on a DXpedition. The first question, of course, is where do we want to go? We look at Club Log. That's the most wanted list. P5. Good flat roofs for contesting for antennas, but no, I don't like all those uniforms. Well, we could try Bouvet Island. Well, a Scandinavian will feel at home. Dark clouds, ice, snow, but it looks like a big slippery slope, and slippery slopes is nothing for an old man, I tell you that. Crozet, penguins everywhere. I've had my coax in a field with cows, and I don't want to clean my coax from penguin poo. You rule it out. Well, we have then Scarborough Reef, of course. Well, that's more like it. Blue sky, blue water, and Bob Value there, sitting, having to build his own little home, bringing building materials, a generator, petrol. Well, my airline, one of the world's favorite airlines, wouldn't allow that. No, I have to do something else. But first I conclude that that most wanted list, maybe yours, I don't know, but it's not my most wanted list when I go on the expedition. I want it family friendly. I like a sunset on the beach. All Scandinavians do that, where you can have your tropical drink as the sun is setting. A warm escape in November, good interesting food, and easy, fairly affordable travel. This is from a tourist brochure, but it's fairly correct. It's a nice place to go to. Some people have been here recently. Oops. It's a nice, short, overnight trip from, let's try that again. From London Gatwick to Mauritius, just a simple little hop. It's very quick, as you can see on this image here. The objective, may I remind you, for me was originally a family holiday. But I found out that I could add a radio add-on when I was in a DX location. My wife had hadn't yet retired, so I came up with the idea that I pack her home and I stay on and play with radio. And when you play with radio, you have to decide what are you going to do. Something simple. With a radio and a wire, you can have a lot of fun with a very simple radio and just a wire. But you can also go more ambitious and do some contesting in different styles. Now, when I retired, I happened to work in California a couple of years, and I had time on my hands, so I got back on radio. I put some radio gear on my car and spent time driving around in Western US, and with that little whip on the back, my interest in shortwave radio really got stimulated again. Because with a 100-watt radio and a short mobile whip, I got up from my camping or my motel before sunrise, and I could work Japan, Australia, and Southeast Asia. And it was really fun. It really piqued my interest in getting back on HF. Back home, I started operating my suburban garden a little bit. And I also did a couple of DXpeditions, IOTA DXpeditions. And again, wire antennas, a simple pole on top of a little hill with water on both sides in the Baltic, made me win a couple of DXpedition trophies in IOTA also piqued my interest. Now, when you go abroad, you have to find a place where to operate. The easiest, of course, is to go to a hotel. But hotels are often noisy places. And hotels have neighbors, other guests, and they are funny people. They don't like antennas. I am always astounded by the fact that they don't see the beauty in our antennas. So if you're really going to do serious radio, you want to look for a small hotel, perhaps a guest house, or try to rent a bungalow, a small house, whatever. And you want a location. You want to choose a location that is better than your suburban London location. You maybe want to be high up. You may want to slope down to the sea in the direction where you're going to operate. Or you want to be on the beach, which is my favorite. So when I was in Mauritius, I found out I could do a 90-minute flight to Rodrigue 3B9. There I found a little cottage on the northeastern side or the northwestern side of the island, not on the beach, but not far away, and had a wonderful view from the cottage down towards northwest, where we have Europe and US. And this is what they look like from the sea, with a beautiful slope that helps your elevation angle when you work DX. While there, by the way, I also set up FT8. I think this was 2016, 2017, and it really lit up the skies. It wasn't for me, actually, it was for Robert, 3B9FR. Most of you who have worked Rodrigues must have worked Robert. He has been active for many years. I spent a lot of time when I was there. I spent more time talking with him than operating, doing DX pile-ups, I must admit. And I got to know him quite well, a very interesting guy with an interesting life story. I was also very lucky because I had a wonderful host family. The big guy, the guy who's bigger than me there on my right in the picture is Johnson, who is an economist by training and a teacher, a politician, and he is actually now, he won the election recently, so he's now the commissioner on the island. And his pretty wife and Bullock and Jennifer there doing, and his kids. Good time, again, spending more time talking with them than doing DX pile-ups, unfortunately, except for the contest. I should say, by the way, that just a month ago, there was another DXpedition to Rodrigues by 3B8 guys. There are many people on 3B8 who are on satellite, Oscar 100, for instance, and they packed their dishes and went to Rodrigues, and you will soon find 3B9FR also on Oscar 100. Katsu, 3B9KW, will be his call when he goes there in November for CQ World by CW, M0ZFW. He is a frequent guest at these conventions, but not this year. So again, we can up the objective a little bit. We have fun with radio, play with radio, but be a little bit more competitive in CQ World by CW. Try to beat the best, in particular beat M6T and K3LR. I was looking for a place on Mauritius, where I had my favorite sea locations. I found this little islet, literally in the middle of the Indian Ocean on the northern side, surrounded by water and with a little house for rent. And we wanted to plan an effort where we could beat the big guys. This is what the Top Guns use. But I have to take a deep breath because, I cannot convince my favorite airline to pack this kind of luggage, even if I could afford it. The baggage limits. To use GRP poles was what I could do. The 26-meter one is promising, but it weighs 3 times as much as an 18-meter pole, so I settled on smaller poles, 18-meter and down. But you need quite a few of them, and you just get them there. So I found this ski box, a sport tube, the box on the right there. I can take several of these poles and I can fold coax into it. And remember, if we do multi-op, by the way, there are several of us traveling, so we can get more poles, more cable, more stuff. Coax, I think we all now familiar with a coax. Yes, some pretty good coax nowadays compared with the old days. The Airborne 5 from Messi and Paoloni, 1.5 kilograms for 100 meters of coax is not bad. Very useful on top band and 80, not so good on 10. But you have other coax, which also is light, affordable, and with low loss. But you have to optimize all your luggage when you do a thing like this. Radio, if I travel with a single radio, I wouldn't be too worried about what radio I travel with, because I'm rather alone in an RF environment there. I haven't got strong signals in the neighborhood. Amplifiers used to be 400 watt in Mauritius. KPA 500 was just right. Now they have 800 watts, so we can use the SPE amplifiers. Now, if you do multi-operations, a whole layer of complexity is added compared with single operations. You have to worry about composite broadband noise, receiver protection. You have to fiddle with the antenna separation, harmonics, passive IM from nonlinear devices. It's a major problem nowadays. You have RF from a transmitter that goes into an LED lamp, RF from a transmitter that goes into a power supply or whatever, and all of a sudden you have a hash generated all over the place. So you have to be able to chase that. I found out that the solid-state amplifiers got crazy when they get RF from the wrong band into the amplifier, so we need to think about that. You bring filter stubs, common mode chokes. You have to worry about the main supply, sensible earthing. Bring various bits and pieces. On in Rodrigues, I used a combined 160-meter umbrella and 80-meter inverted L, which performed very well, but it had fiddly matching. So I always bring some coil stock and some surplus doorknob capacitors. And with the VNA, I can configure the whole thing to work beautifully. In a 3B8MU in 2014 was the first time I did multi with these solid-state amplifiers, and we had this problem of RF getting in the wrong way, sort of, so I had to improvise the filter matching units on a ceramic insulator that can be reused for dining purposes if in an emergency. Nowadays, I'm trying to be a little bit more organized and put my inverted L cap in a specially made box, which is watertight. They sell these specially made boxes at Robert Dyer's, by the way. They cost £1.50 or something like that. Similarly, L network for 40, and there's also a coil, a hairpin coil for the top band antenna. But when you add it all up, there's a lot of paraphernalia, a lot of different bits and pieces you have to think of in advance. Now, Mauritius is very civilized. You can get a lot of stuff there, but there's no Martin Lynch. And you haven't got time when you're there for a few days. You don't want to run around, chase bits and pieces. You have to really think through what will you need when you are there. Now, you need some personal gear, but it's all a very personal decision. You don't need a toothbrush because you get it in flight overnight. A spare set of underwear can be used to protect your sensitive radio gear. And you need a couple of paracetamol pills. But you really have to be careful with what you bring, because your luggage restrictions are severe. And you also have to, by the way, be able to take it through the airport, just the physical handling of it when you check in. You know, there's only so much you can put on a couple of trolleys. Operating in a team, I like that. You have more fun when there are few of you. You need to have team players, though. You need to have people that are willing to, that can see what needs to be done when it has to be done. You need a set of aggregate skills, different kind of operations. You need accuracy, courtesy, patience, a bit of impatience now and then. You need people who can deal with antennas in theory and practice. And nowadays, of course, you need also IT skills, computer skills. And you need to deal with the QSLs, which I hate. So thanks to Charles M0XO, who is not here this year, I believe, but he has offloaded that work for me. In 2014, I had a team with Seppo and Jorma, who many of you old-timers know from Finland, and Oliver W6NV. This is a very unique photo. It's unique in the sense that if Katsu is participating in a contest, he never leaves his chair. This time he has left his chair, so there's an empty chair. That is Katsu's. 2019, I had another group of people with me, Danny KX7M, and Dave Sumner, K1ZZ, who many of you know, of course, and Dick N6AA, one of the world top contestants who has operated CQ worldwide in every zone in the world. and two of his mates, N6VI and W6XT. In 2020, our shack table was underutilized for reasons known to us all. 2021 was there again with Katsu, Oliver, and Denny, and Jamie and SDV joined us, which was a great addition to the team. We did a major fashion upgrade in 2021 and got our red shirts. They have a Mauritian dodo bird on the back. It's an extinct bird. It is no more. But any association with C.W. Morse, I should say, is accidental and not intentional. Now, Mauritius is very far away. It's far away from everywhere, except possibly the penguins on Crozet Island. But we don't need to work the penguins. We don't want to work them, actually. When we look at where the stations are, we find that Europe and US are in the same direction. And there are a few guys off in Japan, but otherwise, nothing in the rest. Now, that's not true, because in the rest of the world, except the 120 degrees behind us, we have all the interesting multipliers. So you have to be able to deal with that too. Oops. But basically, when you are in a place like Mauritius that is so far away from everything, there's only one thing that matters in terms of antennas: elevation angles, low elevation angles, the lowest possible elevation angles. If you use a dipole, you will find that that dipole has to get very, very high up to maximize, or should I say minimize, no, to maximize the gain at low elevation angles. If I am inland, a vertical is outperformed, nevertheless, by the horizontal antennas, as long as you can get the horizontal antennas half wavelength up if you are inland. If you go to the beach, you have an entirely different situation. On the left in this picture is the radiation diagram on land. On the right is the radiation diagram towards the sea. Because the salt water, the seawater, reflects the vertically polarized waves from the vertical antenna so much better than land, so you get fabulous low elevation radiation. If I overlay a horizontal antenna there, that horizontal antenna will easily beat the land side diagram, but not the seaside diagram. Vertical antennas are king on all bands on when you are on the beach. Here's an example of a vertical antenna. This is a vertical dipole array, reflector left, driven element right, using cheap cutting boards as a boom bracket, held by me, admired by Oliver. If we use a vertical dipole, we have a good overall diagram, of course, radiation diagram at low elevation angles, but we don't need to work the penguins. I should say that again. We want to work the guys who are northwest. So doing a two-element VDA, we gain some 3 dB in that direction over the vertical dipole. Now I can do better than that. If I build two VDAs and I use them as an array, I gain another 3 dB. But we then have a problem, of course, because many of the multipliers in the Caribbean on the left, Southeast Asia Pacific on the right, we will miss. So this year I'm going to try this. If I take those two phased arrays and I feed them out of phase, one of them 180 degrees out of phase, I get a minimum towards Europe, US, but we get better lobes towards, let's say, the multipliers, if I call it that. And with a stack match, we will then be able to switch between these patterns. Never tried it before, we'll try it this year. Now, I take much joy out of playing with the technology on paper. It's much easier to play with it on paper or on a computer than build it in real life. So all the stuff we do here, I have model in EasyNeck. But the extra thing here is I use a piece of software called Auto-Easy, in which I can put in, if you play with EasyNeck, you know, it can be quite fiddly, quite time-consuming. But with Auto-Easy, I can use variables, trigonometric equations to find out the coordinates. I can play with all these variables and equations, and I can optimize. It looks, we haven't got time to look at this, but in principle I put in my antenna height. The mast height is 9 meters. I want the bottom 1 meter up. This is a 10 meter VDA, which means the center will be in the middle. I can then go to the optimizer and indicate what do I want to optimize. Well, the dipole length, the reflector length, and the boom length. And I can say that I want the gain maximized, but with an SWR at 1.1 or less. And out comes the numbers again. And I can test it, of course, through EasyNet again, sweep it, and I have an SWR of 1.1 or less over the whole CW band on 10. And the gain and pattern is good. And best of all, it actually works when you cut the antenna in practice. You get very close to what it turns out to be in reality. Let's go back to ClubLog. ClubLog can do something called DXEC analysis. And Mauritius is number 200 on the most wanted. Quite undesirable, actually. But you see, there are some nice slots here, 160, 80, 60, which is not permitted yet. But it's the low bands, essentially, that is a challenge. This can guide us when we think about what are we going to do outside contest hours. We should try to help people fill these slots. VOACAP is another piece of software I love. And the guy, Jari, who has done this, has done a tremendous job in the graphical interface there. If you haven't tried it, you should really play with it. It's very impressive. If I put in the path between UK and Mauritius right now, I can get, I think he calls it a propagation wheel, where you can see what the propagation is on the different bands between UK and Mauritius, with the particular sunspot activity right now around the clock. Useful if you want to know when you should try to call us. It's another thing I have done with VOACAP. 10 meters is very interesting, and it's getting more interesting. It's, however, very boring when sunspot number is nil. It opens up a little bit when you are in the tropics at midday and stays open a little bit in the afternoon, but not to the big population centers, really. It gets much more interesting if we hope for some more solar activity like this. Opens up immediately in the morning, and wow, all of a sudden we have good 10-meter coverage all over the world. These are GIFs. VOACAP can give me an hourly forecast like this, and I have added the GIFs and made a, what do you call it, a dynamic GIF of it. 10 meters looks very interesting with the kind of solar activity we are talking about now. Another piece of software which has helped me when planning effort like this is a piece of software called SH5. I think it's Russian, actually. It's a contest log analyzer. That is the software that gave me this diagram. It shows in what direction are all the QSOs we have had. 10, 11,000 QSOs. Where are the guys? Well, in Europe and North America. Can also show me where were we on 80? When did we make the QSOs on 80? When did we make the QSOs on 20? Coming back to ClubLog, of course, we have a propagation tool which I think is one of the best, because that propagation tool is based on real QSOs. It's based on the QSOs in the logs that have been submitted to ClubLog. As an example, I can see here, if you want to work Mauritius or Rodrigues on 80 and 160, when have previous QSOs from UK taken place? Well, actually, right when I would have expected them. Take midnight at the midpoint between Mauritius and UK, and you will find that that's where you have the peaks. Now we go to try to do all bands with 4 radios, if all radios work, and with 5 operators, 6 operators. So we have to think carefully about how are we going to schedule this. And you see the 6 bands here, and you see the time on the left, the sun on the right. And you notice that in the tropics, midday is the slow time. Well, the rate is high on 10 and 15, I hope. But on 20 meters behave like 40 or 80 up here because the attenuation is so high. So we will never run a big pile up on 20 in the middle of the day. But the challenge for us will be just before sunset and the evening, when all 6 bands are likely to be open. And we have 4 radios and perhaps 5 operators. So we will then have to be a little bit flexible and schedule, and probably actually 40, 80, 160 at sunset. And the hours after will probably be 1 guy, 1 radio. Now, having done 3 multi-ops from Mauritius, this it gives a very interesting illustration of the effect of the solar activity. 2014 activities was actually unusually good in November. We met in more than 3,000 QSOs. In 2019, sunspots were null, zilch, 200 QSOs still. Last year, well, not bad, almost 2,000 QSOs. And this year, of course, we are hoping for more, but you never know with the ionosphere. So, again, we couldn't build this antenna farm, but we did this. 160-meter umbrella vertical on an 80-meter pole, 80-meter inverted L on 80-meter pole. Last year, we tried something new. Instead of a quarter wave with elevated radios on 40, we put up a 40-meter vertical dipole on an 80-meter pole, out in the middle of the ocean, actually, on a rock. We did 20-meter VDAs, 15 and 10, same. And this year we're going to try a K9AY for LF receive. It's not easy to improve LF receive because the environment down there is rather low noise as it is. So I'm not convinced that it would help very much. But it's fun to try and fun to experiment. Now here you have this beautiful island, beautified by our antennas, improved, I would say, with a set of antennas. This is what it looks like when we got it all up. That's the 40-meter vertical dipole out on the rock, 80 and 160. The proof is in the pudding. Oh, the audio.
Delta Germany 2 radio, Oscar November 5 and 9. 73, 3 Bravo 8, stroke Mike 0, Sierra, Delta Victor 5 off.
Well, this is Jamie having fun on 15. Of course, this year I will tell him that what separates the men from the boys is top band. We put him on 160-meter SSB. Moro.
We are looking at a North American mess for 3 Baker 8 Mike from Mauritius Island here on 80-meter CW. Time is 23:58 Zulu, just before 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Really good signal.
This is that was recorded in Minnesota, and this is what makes it rewarding. You know, you spend this time modeling the antennas, locating the antennas, putting them up, and you get a signal like that into the middle of the U.S. on 80 meters. This is good fun. It makes it very rewarding. In 2014, I had one of the things I enjoy when I travel is actually to learn about the country where I am, read about history, meet up with people, and get into it a little bit. In 2014, we had several of those interactions, and we had the old-timers, so you certainly all remember 3B8 Charlie Fox. He's probably in everyone's log because he used to run he still does a little bit, CW from 3B8 for maybe 30, 40 years, I don't know. He's a grand old man of Mauritius, Jackie. Behind him is 3B8 Golf Lima, that's Ashwin, his son. He's into satellites and stuff, and he's also the guy who keeps the government helicopters flying in Mauritius. The strong, tall, big guy on the right, Pat, 3B8 Golf Fox, is a little bit active and almost from satellites to HF. He's an ex-police commissioner, so he's good to have on your side. 3B8 CW, Clive, that's CW, not as in CW, but CW as in cable and wireless, where he worked all his life. He keeps, I brought a QS1R to set up as an RBN node there think probably 8 years ago, and he keeps that going in good style. In 2019, this was, we also had 3B8DU and 3B8FA visiting us, Jean-Marc and Pat, two brothers. They're also into satellites a lot. Jean-Marc is now the president of the Mauritian Amateur Radio Society, and he's been doing great work in stimulating satellite activity also in schools and at the university. And actually last year or the year before, they launched the first Mauritian designed satellite, Mir-1, one of the CubeSats, and they were very proud of that. It was very successful, much due to his enthusiasm and drive behind the project. Here's a nice one. We thought if they can do it at Scarborough, we can do it too. This is Jamie sitting on our 40-meter rock, rotating the 40-meter vertical dipole by hand, and we have to bring him back when the water runs out. Did we do it? Yes, we did beat K3LR and M6T. Pretty good for being so far away from everywhere. There's no chance we can beat CR3W Madeira or PJ2T in Curacao or even TK0C in Corsica, I think they are, because they are so close to the population center. In Corsica, you can run 40 and 80, 24 hours a day, for instance. But it was good fun to beat them with wires and fishing poles. I should say, though, that we didn't win Africa. CR3W, I think, is in Africa, or they're not. So we will never win Africa against those guys. What can we do better next time? That's a question. It's always one of the most fun questions, because after the contest you are high. You have experience, you know what has worked, what hasn't worked, so you ask yourself, what can you do better next time? Better antennas, always. Better station, yeah, perhaps. Low band receive. Similar things to talk about and make notes, which you then can forget about, of course, which you then will forget when you travel there next time. Okay, it's the last evening. Everything is packed. We're about to go to the airport, pack off. I had a tough final job, finishing off what's left in the food cabinet and drinks cabinet. The sun is setting. We have to start thinking about where we're going to go next. Will it be P5, Beauvais, or the Penguins? And the decision is easy. We'll go back, same place this year. Thank you very much.